Sister Aquila is one of, I mean, she's a very, very good poet. And a lot of times I call her or I text her at the last minute and I asked her to come and do a program for me. And one time she told me she couldn't make it because it was Thanksgiving and she was, I believe she was out of town. I think she was in New York and she wanted to be with her family. So everybody, please put your hands together for this sister. She is dynamite and she has, I don't know if she brought any of her CDs with her, but look her up on Facebook because she is a very dynamic, she's more than a poet, she is a dynamic speaker. So sister, please come to the stage, Sister Aquila.
Wow. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings to all. I am so humbled by that introduction. I am humbled and grateful to be here, to be a part of this event, to highlight the achievement of such men who've changed the course of history. So it's an honor to be here and to share some of my poetry with you. And I hope you enjoy it. So I have a little disclaimer, or not quite a disclaimer. I always say if they ask me to be here, they must have wanted to hear me speak. Okay. Do you see my son? He will stand at his peak about 6 feet, shoulders bold, and physique like his Mandingo father, sun-kissed by West African flames, a king in his rightful place, a warrior like his father, a revolutionary like his mother, a spiritual seer like his ancestral grandfathers, a liberator of his hood, a liberator of his hood. But who taught them to be followers instead of leaders? And who taught them ignorance instead of history? Do you see my son? The one I carried in my womb for 9 months. 9 months of spiritual connection at his best. I represent his village. You're supposed to represent his village. Do you see my son? They shot him down a few years ago. His name was Sean Bell, and they feared his African presence. Do you see my son? His name was Troy Davis. They executed him a few years ago. They executed his ancestral grandfathers a few centuries ago. Do you see my son? His name was Trayvon Martin. They took his future because they feared his presence and stole his past. He was sun-kissed by African flames. Do you see my son? His name was Kenneth Harding. They shot him down in San Francisco because his ancestors were sun-kissed by African flames. They denied him his future, and the village never taught him his past, his history. You're supposed to represent his village. Do you see my son? His name was Ray Molly Graham. They shot him down because they feared his future. Do you see my son? His name was Amadou Diallo, and he was sun-kissed by West African flames. Do you see my sons? I represent their village. Their names were Timothy Thomas, Fred Hampton, Jamil Cannon, Aquan Salmon, Mark Dugans, Eric Garner, Mike Brown, and the list goes on. Do you see my son? They say a black man's life ain't worth bus fare in America. Don't let them become images of silent pain. Do you see my son? He will be a warrior like his father and a revolutionary like his mother. He will liberate his hood and stand against injustice. And if you see my son, don't forget to be the village that raises him. Don't let him become a travesty of justice, a political prisoner like Mumia, Kwame Cannon, Washington, Jalil, Luther King. Teach them the lessons of Malcolm, Martin, Huey. Teach them the lessons of Malcolm, Martin, Huey, the compassion of Prophet Isa, the example of Prophet Muhammad. Teach them their legacy from Adam, their sovereignty of Mansa. And when you see my son, don't refer to him as little nigger, because he is a king in his rightful place. I carried him in my womb for 9 months and named him Musa, drawn out of the water, after the Malian king Mansa, after the prophet Moses, and after his ancestral grandfather who was sun-kissed by West African flames. So if you see my son, you get to call him by his name. Thank you. This next poem I dedicate it to my grandmother, who would be 95 today. I celebrated my birthday yesterday. I just turned 44. I actually wrote this poem a few days before my grandmother's funeral, and so I actually performed this at her funeral. Grandma, tell me the secrets of your journey. Through your eyes, extend me your legacy. Through poetry, your generosity, your wisdom, your beauty, your wit, your artistic gift, your pleasantry unspoken, your wayward words, even the ones left unspoken. Your devotion can be discovered in the creases of your smile. You were my foundation as a youth, your home my sanctuary. And I remember on your walls hung strange fruit. And I remember in your eyes I have discovered my truth. And even when it was hard to be me, it was always easy with you. Grandma, tell me the secrets of your journey through your eyes. And even when you smiled through the unpleasantry, I understood anything worth fighting could never be compromised. I studied the stories of your childhood. I sat through the awkward silence when you got to the parts that weren't all good. And finally, you would end our moments with, praise the Lord. And there I realized your past met my presence. And there I realized we shared more than common birthdays and poetry. I admired your strength, your courage, your kindness, your sense of humor, your willingness to give. And in your eyes I could see your struggle, your strength, your fight, your plight, your determination to live, to be. And today I stand here and pray your final destination is peace. A place of spiritual conquest, a place where reaching the top is no longer a contest, where green pastures meet lily-drifted waters and faces are filled with everbest, where simplicity meets extravagance and flaws are no longer relevant, where time has no limit and blissful moments are infinite, where sweet notions are like drops of sweet rain, where pleasure and love is one and the same, where days are endless and nights are simple reminders of endless days and brief successions to stargaze, a place where sweet dreams are the only remnants of the past, a place where beauty and youthfulness will forever last, a place where innocence dwells and longevity prevails, where all are greeted by harmonious syllables of peace. A place where indifferences and iniquities will cease, where sectism and pretentious notions are humbled by facts, where unity and brotherhood is no longer an act, where nations and tribes are no longer separated by culture and pride, where those who love the Most High will dwell after this lifelong ride. And Grandma, I pray I could carry your legacy with pride, and I promise I will hold the secrets of your journey I discovered in your eyes. Thank you. And so again, if they ask me to come, then they must have wanted to hear me speak. So I'm happy to stand on a platform for justice, but we cannot have a conversation about justice without addressing injustice. And so there, I analyze the hidden agenda, and so I'm confronting the oppressor, the greatest contender. And some of these leaders be like the greatest pretenders. And these banks are just institutions to my people, some of them ain't lenders. And if we speak truth and not the alternative, then the American dream was killed in the hoods of West Virginia. The American dream was gunned down by some racist cop last November. And freedom, justice, equality, I ain't familiar. Stacks of lies held up by those political pillars. In God they trust, it's just something written on them dollars. And so if they ask me to come, then they must have wanted to hear me speak. And so my people, many of us need to wake up. They institutionalize the racism, but it's still in your face. It can't get any realer. And Hood Chronicle, they keep gunning down our kids and the order is chronological. And then they destroy the head of the black family, the black man by means psychological. And then they have the audacity to place the black queen on a pole instead of a pedestal. But with my intuition, trust I can see past those lies on television. So whose reality are we really living? And who's responsible for creating such division, even in religion? And we are all descendants of Africans, whether we are Muslim, spiritual tribes of Israel, or Christian, and that's real. And you see, every day I'm battling these demons coming at me, but what's the reason? Is it my intellect or what I'm speaking, or the fact that I may be raised in the next UEPN, but I cleanse my mind, perform ablution, head north, and start a revolution? And then they say I dishonor the red, white, and blue because I left the red, black, and green, and now they want me for flag desecration. But you see, I'm laughing at this so-called free nation. And somewhere between the floor and the ceiling, brothers put down the struggle because the hustle was more appealing, and now I'm perpendicular to niggas instead of adjacent to kingsmen. But you see, I'm perplexed by the idea of allowing another one of our sons to become acceptable victims. We can't settle for circumstance haphazardly. We can't keep screaming injustices and yelling, it's a travesty. We gotta move. We have to move. We gotta move from mental ghettos to open space. We gotta not only preach by any means, but do anything to uplift our race. And that's real. Thank you. Thank you.
ITV, Call of Peace. Say